In this video, we're going to work on a very nice reharmonization of Amazing Grace. Let's take a listen to the original progression. And here's our final reharm. We'll be using the map in Mapping Tonal Harmony Pro to create the reharmonization and to explore all sorts of interesting techniques, from chord substitutions, inversions, secondary dominants, sub-fives, and many others. For those of you who are not familiar with Mapping Tonal Harmony Pro, remember that this map helps us understand and visualize harmony in a unique and coherent way. Every song that has been written or is yet to be written that's tonal is in this map. As always, we'll start with the original progression laid out on our canvas. In tonal harmony, there are three regions: the tonic, the subdominant, and the dominant. And we map every harmonic function in a specific place on this map. The one chord is always in the tonic region at 12 o'clock. This is our home, where we want to return after our journey around the map. The 4 is always in the subdominant region at 11 o'clock. This is a transitional place, and we can see it as a mountain. And the 5 is always in the dominant region at 1 o'clock. This is the region with the most amount of tension and excitement. We see it as a boat on a rough sea. We certainly want to return home when we're in this region. Every harmonic function has its own place on the map. We can view the map at different levels, with more and more functions appearing as we zoom in. But don't feel overwhelmed about all the possible functions available. We don't have to use them all every time we write a song. These arrows and brackets are all the best roads that we can take. As we always say, a song is a story that you can tell while traveling from function to function within the map. And if you want to arrive safely at your destination, you take the best roads. If you have Mapping Tonal Harmony Pro, you can use it while watching this video and then try the different techniques I'll be showing you. Pause the video if you want to explore your own ideas, but you don't need Mapping Tonal Harmony Pro to follow the entire process. There's also an interactive PDF version of the map called the Composer's Guide to Tonality. So let's get started. Our original progression is in the key of C, and we're only using 3 chords: C major, G major, and F major. These are the 1, 5, and 4 chords. Let's play the original chord progression and see how we're traveling around the map. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you is how this progression uses 2 main cadences in music. We start on the tonic, go to the subdominant, and then come back to the tonic again. This creates what's known as a plagal cadence, which is very common in gospel and church hymns. And we're also traveling this way, from the tonic to the dominant, and then back to the tonic again. This creates an authentic cadence, which clearly defines the key that we're in. The first thing I want to do is use this plagal cadence at the end of the song like this. The plagal cadence works beautifully at the end of church hymns. Arriving home directly from the mountain region is so powerful. This is always a great cadence to use when you want to end a song with this kind of sound. And let me give you a cool trick that you can always use if you want to make this ending, or any ending for that matter, sound a bit more melancholy. Use the minor 4 chord from the minor key instead. Isn't that awesome? And what the heck, since we're already here, let me give you another amazing chord that you can use here, the 1 diminished 7. This gives you yet another option, a bit more on the jazz or gospel side of things, but it works great. And remember, when you decide which of these ending techniques that you want to use, or when you try different options, let your imagination and ears be your guide. Try different things and use what sounds good to you. All right, so let's go back and look at the first couple of measures in the song. This second measure could use a bit more color. When you have a repeated chord across 2 or more measures, you might want to add some color and make it different from the previous measures. One easy way to do this is to consider extending the chord. A 1 chord is paired with the major scale, so you can always extend the 1 chord and turn it into a major 7 chord. Isn't that amazing? You don't always need to change the function to add color to your harmony. Reharmonization could be as simple as that. Turning the C chord into a C major 7 creates an inner line, C to B, and then A on the F chord. We're adding movement in the harmony. And we can also use the same idea on the 4 chord and turn it into an F major 7. But there's another option here. See how we're traveling from the 1 chord to the 4 chord? Can we sneak up on the 4 chord instead of just going to it right away? Can we make this 4 chord sound more inevitable? Sure. All we need to do is use the 5/7 of F. This is a secondary dominant. Every diatonic chord has these mini neighborhoods made out of secondary functions. They're like little mini maps. So here's the 5 of 4, the 2 of 4, and so on. Listen to what happens when I replace this C major chord in the second measure with the 5 of 4. Now we're traveling the map like this. And this C7 to F is a 5-to-1 cadence. This is one of those main roads that I was talking about at the beginning of the video. Now we're visiting other places in the map and traveling using these beautiful roads in tonal harmony. When you look at tonal harmony this way, you can take the listener on all sorts of journeys around the map. And this path differs from our previous reharmonization by just one note. Instead of having this C to B to A line, we now have a C to B flat to A line. Actually, we can even take this entire path by interpolating the 2 of 4, a G minor 7 chord here. Now we have a 2/5 of the 4 chord that targets that 4 chord, a bracket followed by an arrow. Brackets represent 2/5 progressions and arrows represent 5-to-1 progressions. I'll use the first technique with the C major 7 for my reharmonization, but you can use either. You decide what you like. Another measure that can use some reharmonization is this one right here. Now we have 3 consecutive C chords. So let's do something different this time. When you're stuck on a chord, like in this case, you can always visit other places in the same region. Look at what happens when I change this C chord, the 1 chord in measure 5, with the 6 chord, A minor. Did you hear how that changed the color completely? These substitutions between chords that belong to the same region are really beautiful. Both A minor and C belong to the tonic region. Chords in the same region share lots of qualities, but at the same time, they differ in mood and color. So the 6th chord is a great substitution for a 1 chord. If we leave this last C chord alone, we get this. And it doesn't sound too bad, but there's something even better that we can do. Let's use a D7 chord. Doesn't that sound awesome? And can you see what we're doing? Right, we're using the same technique I showed you before when we used the 5 of the 4 chord. But this time we're approaching the G with its 5/7. D7 is a secondary dominant, the 5/5. In fact, this road here, this arrow connecting the 5/5 to the 5 chord, is known as the half cadence. And it's very often used to arrive at the 5 chord in the middle of a song, halfway until the end. So instead of taking this path, we're now taking this one. And by the way, knowing all these names like secondary dominants, half cadences, and so on, it's not crucial or even necessary. The important thing is that you know how these places and paths sound. Of course, the more you travel these roads, the more you'll learn the names, and eventually the names will become second nature to you. Someone says the 5/5 or half cadence, and you'll hear it. Or someone tells you how talented you are because you can reharmonize any song on the fly. But in reality, you just know the landscape really well because you've traveled those roads so many times before. Remember, anything that you're willing to practice, you can do. All right, so next, let me show you a very interesting phenomenon that lives in this particular region of the map. This is something that we can exploit to get closer to the 5 chord without taking any roads at all. So we're playing A minor to D7 to G, a 6, 5/5, 5. But look at the 2/5. It's an A minor 7 chord. It's the same as the 6 chord from before. The A minor chord lives in 2 places at the same time. Another way to look at this is that we can travel from the 6 chord to the 2/5 instantly, like a wormhole. I would say the main difference between the 6 chord and the 2/5 chord is that while the 6 chord works better as a minor triad, the 2/5 works better as a minor 7 chord. So by just turning the A minor into an A minor 7, we're instantly changing the 6 chord into a 2/5. We can now target the 5 chord with its 2/5 like this. Remember that we can always interpolate a related 2 before a 5 chord and turn the arrow path into a bracket arrow path, just like I showed you before with the 4 chord. And there's yet another chord we can visit while we're here. This chord right here. This A flat 7 chord has been used in tonal harmony progressions since the classical period by the likes of Mozart, Beethoven, Brahms, you name it. Nowadays, we can see it as a sub-5 of 5. Remember, a sub-5 is a tritone substitution of a dominant chord. Any dominant chord has a tritone substitution. The tritone substitution for G7, the 5 in our key, is a D flat 7. D flat is a tritone away from G. So D flat 7 and G7 share the same tritone, that B to F. And every secondary 5/7 in the map is accompanied by a sub-5, which is found on the opposite side of the circle of fifths. G flat 7 is the sub-5 of 4, and it's a great substitution for the 5 of 4. E flat 7 is the sub-5 of 2 and can be used to replace the 5 of 2, A7. In our case, the A flat 7 is the tritone substitution of the D7 that we're using right here. If D7 is the 5 of 5, then we say the A flat 7 is the sub-5 of 5. And it could replace the D7, the 5 of 5, or be used alongside it. Look what happens when I add it here on this D in the melody. have a clear half cadence at the midpoint of our song. This G chord is the 5 chord, and it also lasts for 2 measures, so we can do something here for sure. One approach that we can take is the one that we tried at the beginning of the song, and just consider extending the triad to a 7th or a 9th or even a 13th. But look at the melody, it has an E. That's the 13th of a G7 chord. So if we just turn a G triad into a G7, we'll get a G13 sound, which can resolve to C major 7 instead of a regular C triad. But I also want to show you what happens if we replace the first G with a D minor chord. Now we're turning the simple arrow path into an arrow bracket path. We're interpolating the 2 chord, D minor 7, before the 5 chord. This is a great move that pushes the harmonic progression forward. Every time you have a half cadence, you can replace the 5 chord with a 2-5, and the sound you get is a more forward moving progression. So instead of this, you have this. And we can also try using the sub 5 on this E note here. Remember, the sub 5 is on the opposite side of the 5 chord. In our case, it's a D flat 7. Remember that although all these techniques I'm showing you are extremely effective, you can add as many or as few as you want. All you need is the desire to make beautiful things happen in the song. Let your ears decide what sounds good to you. So what can we do on this C chord that repeats again? You got it, a 2-5 of F. G minor 7 to C7 to F major 7. And on this C, we could try substituting this C with an A minor. It's a 6. But let me show you something really beautiful that we can do here. On this last G note in the melody, we can play a G7 chord and then resolve it to the A minor. Now we're taking this path here. This is a deceptive cadence, a 5 chord that resolves to the 6 minor. This is such a beautiful cadence because everyone is expecting the G7 to resolve to the tonic. But we're deceiving the listener by arriving to the tonic region by getting to the 6 chord and not the expected 1 chord. The deceptive cadence creates such a nice color. It's more nostalgic and less final. You'll make the listener feel that something else is going to happen. Look, if I just play 5-7 to 1, the song sounds like it ended. But when we play 5-7 to 6, the progression is clearly not done. There's something else I want to show you. Look at the path we have now. We're moving around the map from the subdominant to the tonic, and then to the dominant, back to the tonic. It sounds nice, but there's a much more interesting path that we can take if we use this chord here, the 1-6-4. This is a C over G. We label it a 1-6-4 because it's a 1 chord in second inversion, a C chord with G on the bass. G to E is a 6th, and G to C is a 4th, so we call it a 1-6-4. In fact, we usually call it a cadential 6-4 chord, and that's because it doesn't function as a tonic chord. A 1-6-4 is a dominant chord with a double appoggiatura that almost always precedes the 5 chord. So when we replace the C chord in this progression with a C over G, we get this. Sounds so pretty, and that's because our bass line has turned into a stepwise ascending bass line. Bass lines are really important. You always want the bass line to move counterclockwise around the circle of fifths or by steps up or down. Remember, we can always achieve new bass movement by using inversions. Actually, remember when we used the A minor wormhole to get from the 6 to the 2 of 5 here, and we turned A minor into an A minor 7 followed by a D7? We could have played this A minor 7 in third inversion, making it an A minor 7 over G, and then a D7 in first inversion with F sharp on the bass, giving us this. Anyways, let's get back to our 1-6-4 chord here. So far we have this. So now we have this stepwise bass movement here. F, G, A. But let me show you an even better bass line that we can create here. I'm going to use the sharp 4 diminished 7 chord. In the key of C major, this is an F sharp diminished 7. Actually, this function is usually expressed as the 7 diminished 7 of 5 right here on the map. So F sharp diminished 7 is a secondary function that targets the G chord. It's the 7 diminished 7 of the G chord. But if we pass through it coming from the 4 chord and then go on to the 1-6-4 before the 5 chord, we get this. Now we can see it as a sharp 4 diminished 7. The bass moves up chromatically and the path we're taking is this. And it sounds very much in the gospel style. All right, so I know it might seem as if I'm giving you too many options. And you're probably wondering, how am I supposed to remember all of these chords and paths? Well, trust me, if you can move around your neighborhood and remember where the supermarket is, or where the gas station is, or how to get to your friend's house, you can learn this. Anyone can learn it. It's just practice. Look, I've been using this gospel path for so long that I know it by heart. This 4 sharp 4 diminished 7 to 1-6-4 to 5 is ubiquitous in gospel and jazz. You've probably heard it so many times before already. But if you visualize it like this, you can just retrieve it from your memory bank with no effort whatsoever. If I'm in A flat major, I just think of these paths right away and I know how it sounds and how to play it. It's just D flat to D diminished 7 to A flat over E flat to E flat 7, right? It only takes playing it a few times while understanding how you're traveling around the map to really master it. Remember, all these functions have a purpose. So here's our final reharm of Amazing Grace. And remember to look at this and all chord progressions as a journey around the map. If you have Mapping Tonal Harmony Pro, change the key and play the progression by thinking of the paths you're taking. Soon enough, you'll be able to travel around the map in your head in any key and reharmonize on the fly.